I heard you wanted to leave the United States and move abroad because you think it's cheaper. Hold on, friend. Let me put you on to some game. There's a lot of people that move to other countries that have a lower cost of living, and then they move back home within a year or two due to financial strain. There are four expenses that they didn't consider before uprooting their lives. Let's talk about it. I'm Malika, a stock market investor and a money coach. I built my portfolio to fund my freedom. Then I retired from corporate America in my 40s, and now I coach other professional Black women to do the same. After I left my job in 2022, I moved abroad, and there are significant costs to make living abroad sustainable long term. There is this assumption that moving abroad only requires a passport, a flight, a hope, and a dream. In some countries, housing and food is less expensive than in the United States. But as a foreigner, it doesn't reflect 100% of your financial reality. As I mentioned, there are four expenses that causes financial strain on foreigners, and it sends many expats packing to return home within 1 to 2 years. Let's talk about those four expenses. Number one, visa. The visa costs for legal residency in other countries. Now, I'm not talking about traveling, slow traveling, and bopping around and staying in a country as long as your passport allows you. I'm talking about you choose a country and you decide to make that new country your home. If you're going to stay longer than your tourist exemption allows, you're going to need a visa. The visa that I just obtained for the country that I plan to call home is good for up to 10 years. The initial visa is 5 years and it can be renewed for another 5 years for a total of 10 years. That visa cost me $1,500. And then I had to hire a lawyer to help me with the paperwork. And the lawyer cost me another what's equivalent to almost $400. In addition to that, I had to prove financial solvency to show that I met the requirements for that visa. So I had to have a specific amount of money in my brokerage account and show them my account statements. Getting a visa is not cheap. The second unexpected expense that I think a lot of people don't talk about is the housing costs. Now, I know you're probably thinking, girl, that housing can't cost no more than the United States. And you're right, but I'm not talking about the monthly expense. In other countries, they don't use credit checks. They don't verify your income in the traditional way like the United States and require you to earn 3 times or 4 times the monthly rent. However, all of those criteria are to mitigate risk. So without those risk parameters, you think these other countries are just going to rent to you all willy-nilly without mitigating risk? Absolutely not, friend. What they do in these other countries is they require multiple deposits. So in the country that I'm in right now, you have to pay 3 months of the rent in advance. That's 2 months of the security deposit and 1 month of the first month rent in advance. In addition to that, you have to pay a utility deposit, and then on top of that, you have to pay a lease agreement fee. And that's basically a fee to the lawyer for drafting the rental contract for you. So let's say your rent is equivalent to $900 a month for your one-bedroom apartment. You probably think, oh, girl, that's cheap. That's a good deal because my one-bedroom apartment in the United States is $1,500 or $1,600 a month. So $900, that's a good deal. But friend, if you have to pay 3 months in advance before you even move in, before they give you the keys, $900 times three, that's $2,700 just to move in. Let's not forget the utility deposit before you move in, the lease agreement fee. In the country that I'm in right now, I think the lease agreement fee may be equivalent to about $100 or $200. Girl, all of that adds up. And not to mention that security deposit, they say the security deposit is refundable. Those security deposits, depending on the country you're in, depending on the landlord you have, that security deposit may or may not be refundable. So if your rent is $900 and you paid 3 months to move in, $2,700, those 2 months that's the security deposit, you may not see that again. That's $1,800 that you will have to charge to the game. Because if the landlord say, I'm not giving it back to you, you're a foreigner. What you gonna do? Sue them? How do you know how to file a complaint? How do you know how to navigate the legal system if that country speaks a different language than you? You see where I'm going with this? So you are at the mercy of your landlord. And if that landlord decides not to refund you that security deposit, that's $1,800 that you have nothing to show for. And if you want to move to another apartment or another house and you got to eat that $1,800, when you go to that next place, they're going to require 3 months rent too. You see my point? But girl, that ain't all. The third unexpected expense that sent a lot of expats packing is the currency fluctuation. In the country that I'm in right now, the currency exchange for $1 is equivalent to 3.89 ringgit. Last year, $1 was equivalent to 4.28 ringgit. So let's say your rent is 3,500 ringgit. So we're going to stick with the $900 example. This year, 3,500 ringgit is equivalent to $900. However, last year, 3,500 ringgit was equivalent to $818. So that's no rental increase. That's no inflation. That's simply a change in the value of the US dollar. So if you are relying on the strength of the USD in order to live in this other country that has a lower cost of living, and you think you're going to move there with your USD and you're going to ball out, you're going to get humbled real quick because as the value of the USD goes down, which it has been over the past 6 to 12 months, the strength of that foreign currency is going up. So that means the conversion is not going to give you as much bang for your dollar. So if you moved into this apartment last year thinking your rent was going to be about $800, and then 1 year later, let's say your landlord doesn't even increase your rent and say, I'm going to keep your rent at 3,500 ringgit because the value of the US dollar changed. That $800 in rent that you were paying last year is now $900 with no change in the local cost of things. It's just simply the fluctuation in the currency. That happens all the time. So if you are on a limited budget and you're moving to this country because you think it's cheaper, let's say you have $2,000 a month to live on and you have all of these other expenses. You got your medical bills, you got your storage bill back at in the United States, and you have all these other bills that make your budget pretty tight. Let's say your total expenses are $1,800 a month, but because you make $2,000 a month from whatever that source is, you can make it. You're living pretty comfortable because you're living in this country that has a lower cost of living. However, the second that currency fluctuates, all of your expenses are going to go up. So if you were budgeting right up under the amount of money that you bring in 2,000, you were budgeting right at 1,800. As soon as the currency fluctuate, your total expenses, although they didn't change in the country because the value of the US dollar went down, the amount of money that you would need to convert in order to equate to the exact same amount in that local currency is going to be much higher. And if you only have $2,000, where are you going to get the difference from? The country doesn't look as affordable anymore. And that's another reason why expats end up packing up and going back home. But girl, I got one more for you. I told you I'm gonna give you the tea. The last one is medical expenses. Yes, I know this is another one where you would think, but Malika, medical care in the US is so expensive. It must be cheaper abroad. I heard medical care was very cheap in all of these other countries. Yeah, you heard right. But guess what? Here's where a lot of people get hung up. In the United States, either we have insurance and what we pay out of pocket is our copay, or we have to meet our deductible. For people that don't have insurance, they may go to the emergency room or urgent care. But the main thing about the United States, they treat you first and they bill you later. When you're in a foreign country, ain't no such thing as billing you later. Baby, they want their money right now. They want their money up front. They want their money immediately. So if you have a medical emergency, whether it's related to a pre-existing condition, an accident, or a new condition, when you go to the hospital to get treatment, they're going to treat you, but they're going to want their money in advance. And although it's less expensive there, depending on what they're treating, the cost can add up, especially when you got to pay it out of pocket. Now, there is international insurance that you can get when you live abroad, but a lot of those insurance providers, they expect you to pay out of pocket first, file a claim, and they reimburse you later. Most people don't even have insurance because they think, oh, I live in this country with a lower cost of living that has more affordable medical care, so I'm just going to pay out of pocket anyway. That's okay if you have a sinus infection, if you have a lingering migraine, or if you have a stomach ache, a stomach bug that just won't go away. But girl, what about when you have a real emergency that requires admission to the hospital? Before you check out of that hospital, those people are going to want their money. When I had surgery in 2024, they did give me an itemized estimate, which I do like compared to the United States. There was no shocking bill that came later. So I knew approximately what the surgery was going to cost. But you best believe when I showed up to that hospital and I registered at the registration desk, they was like, ma'am, you remember this estimate that we gave you right here? Yeah, we gonna need half of that in advance before we let you check into our hospital. I had my surgery. Everything went well. I was in the hospital for about 5 days. The day it's time for me to be released to go home. What you think they did? They ain't send me no bill for the other half. No, ma'am. They was like, excuse me, are you ready to check out, ma'am? We gonna need the other half. Here's your balance. In foreign countries, if you don't have the money to pay your bill, you are not leaving. Girl, they want their money. It ain't no billing you later. You need to consider the amount of money that you have available. Can you pay that bill in full in advance so you can get your treatment and be allowed to leave? I'm telling you, sis, in order to make living abroad sustainable long term, you need money for your moving expenses. I would say at least 6 months of emergency reserves and an income that travels with you that's not dependent on an employer that can lay you off. The income that I prefer, of course, is passive income that's generated by your portfolio. Otherwise, you're just taking an extended vacation with plans that you don't know is going to send you back home in a year or two. But if you want to invest strategically so you can build a portfolio that's generating passive income, book a clarity call and I'll help you get started. The link is in the description of this video. But girl, I thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.